Hello and welcome to Ukramedia.com. My name is Sergey Praknevsky, and only hours ago, Adobe released a new version of After Effects, and it has some exciting news to all of you that enjoy expressions. Why, you might ask? Well, because the expression editor field in the timeline panel, that thing has been updated and now provides a full code editor interface. So in this video, I'm going to show you all the new features that you'll find in the new expression editor field. Number one is line numbers and syntax highlighting. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So for this example, I have just a simple setup here. I have a text file, and also I wrote like some kind of an expression here. I do have a comment. I have a variable that has a number, then another variable has a string, and then another one has a keyword like a Boolean, true or false, and an array, and also like a path to a slider. And then I kind of added them together using a method called number. So that's kind of what it looked like in the past. But now watch what happens when I go into this expression editor. Watch this. As you can see, it lights up like a Christmas tree, all the beautiful colors. And then we also have the numbers right here on the left side. So each line is numbered. Huge. I love that feature. So right away, colors are there just to see things quicker, to read code much better. So right now, as you can see, a comment has its own color, and so does like the variable right here. Different variables, they use like a default color. The numbers have different colors. Strings, as you can see, all of that has the same kind of consistency. And then the same thing for keywords, arrays, and even methods. So methods and keywords kind of have the same color. But another thing that I really think it's useful for, when you create a new variable, a lot of times you're not sure if the variable you're creating, if it's already an existing keyword, right? And now you know for sure if it's a keyword because it would light up red. For example, if I wanted to create a variable called Boolean, right away when I type it, you can see it lights up red, which it tells me that it's a keyword. It's something that already exists. So now I know, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to create a variable out of this. So that can definitely come in handy. But another cool thing about all of this is that the colors and the numbers, all that stuff, the background color, even selection, the alpha of the selection, all of that can be changed easily in the preferences. So you can go into preferences. You can either use a keyboard shortcut, Control Alt semicolon, or you can go to Edit and then Preferences. And then right away, you'll see a new tab here called Scripting and Expressions. When you click on it, it'll take you to right here, this area where everything kind of lives together. And what I want to focus on is this area right here. So this is kind of like a visual representation of what it would look like in the editor. So as you make your changes, you can see that it'll show you visually what you're doing, which is great. So now you can change the colors of your like default colors, like variables, your background, like this background right here. You can actually change it to something like maybe dark bluish or something like that. As you can see, that's what it would look like. Then you can change the keywords to something else, like maybe bright green. And as you can see, it does change that. Again, you can go through all of these and create your own theme. You can save it. You can use already existing themes that Adobe created for you. A lot of them are pretty cool. And you can obviously create your own, save it. You can load custom ones. That's pretty cool. Another cool thing that I really like is that you can change the selection. So if I select something, you can see the selection itself has a color and also transparency. So you can change the color right here. You can tell it to be, I don't know, like blue, right? As you can see, it's blue. And you can also adjust selection alpha. So you can crank that up all the way. And as you can see, it does it. And if for some reason you don't like any of this, you can turn it off. You can go over here where it says syntax highlighting. You can uncheck that. And as you can see, it kind of goes away. It becomes one color and you can adjust its default color. And then the same thing goes for these numbers. If for some reason you don't like them, you can turn them off. Number two is optional inline error message. And this one is really handy. Let me show you what it does. So for this example, I have a code here, but just a bunch of variables, and then I added them together. But let's make a mistake in here. So I'm going to say F, let's put 1 in front of you. And obviously it's going to trigger an error. And as you can see, we have a message in here. We have an icon in here, so we can click on it and kind of read more about it. That's how we dealt with it in the past. It tells us which line it is on, and then we would find that line and fix it. However, if you have like 200 lines of code, which is not uncommon, then let's say you have an error on line 67. In the past, we didn't have each line numbered like we do now. So we had to count each line to get to 67, which would take some time. Well, not only do we have lines that are numbered, but now Adobe made it even easier. So I can go back into my code, and as you can see, we have this arrow pointing to the exact line where my error is. So now I can fix it. And not only that, right underneath that line, it displays the error message. So it tells me what's wrong with it, which is great. And by the way, if for some reason you don't like this feature, you can turn it off. You just have to go into Preferences. Again, Control-Alt, semicolon, or you can go to Edit, Preferences, and get there that way. But I'm going to click on the Scripting and Expressions. And in here, we have this checkbox for inline error. So you can just turn that off. Another cool thing about this feature, you can use it for debugging. And what I mean by that, sometimes you want to find out the value of certain line. For example, I'm not sure what this line equals to. Obviously, I do know right now it's 28, but if I look at it just at the code, all I see is a bunch of variables. And what if I wanted to find out what's the value of that line? I can just type in throw like this. And then if I click away and go back into it, you can see that it displays right here an error message with the value of this line. So that's a cool way of like debugging. You can do it for any line you want. You can go over here and do the same thing for this B. You can say throw. Obviously, it's going to give me 2. So when I click away and go back into it, it gives me 2. Number 3 is word selection. And this one is a small one, but I absolutely love it. It definitely saves me a lot of time. So for example, I have a line of code. And in the past, if I wanted to just select a single word, like the slider right here, if I would double click on it, in the past, it would just select the whole line of code, which was kind of annoying. But now you can double click on any of them, like the slider. You can see it only selects the word and nothing else. The same thing for value, effect, layer. It can definitely save you some time. Number 4 is tabs, and this one is very useful. Let me show you what it does. For this example, I have the same kind of looking code, but I'm going to highlight a number of different lines of code, and I'm going to press a tab key. Each time you do that, it inserts indents into your code, which is perfect for formatting, right? You can hit it again and it does more and so on. But if you want to go in the opposite direction, you can just press Shift Tab. And each time you do that, it goes in the opposite direction. So again, it's perfect for formatting, but you have more control with that. If you go into your preferences, again, Control-Alt, semicolon, and make sure you go to the Scripting and Expressions tab. In here, under tabs, we have this width set to 4. So each time you hit a tab key, it moves it forward by 4 spaces. So you can increase that to maybe 8, right? And then it's going to go 8 spaces. And then each time you indent, each time you hit a tab key, you can also see or like insert a guide, like it will show you a visual guide. So you can see right here, if you check this checkbox for show indent guides, each time you hit a tab key, you'll see a guide. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to press OK. So now let's go back to here and let's select the same kind of code. And then if you press tab, you can see each time we do it, we see a guide. So now we can see how many times we hit tab key. And then if we want to go back again, Shift Tab, and it goes back. Number 5 is spaces. And this one is a bit difficult to explain, but I'm going to try anyway. So for this example, I'm going to go in front of this D variable and I'm going to press tab key about 3 times. Wouldn't it be nice when you created this, instead of me hitting backspace right now, if I do it, it erases the whole tab. But what if I wanted to erase a single space? How can I make that happen? Because right now, if I do it again, it just gets rid of the whole tab. And you might be wondering, like, why is that useful? Well, it does come in handy when you're formatting your code. So let me show you how to do that. You have to make sure you go into your preferences. And again, make sure you go into the Scripting and Expressions tab. And in here, you have to uncheck this Use Tabs checkbox. So that's the first step. And then you also have to uncheck this backspace unintents. And basically what happens when you uncheck the Use Tabs, it still works the same way. It'll still create a tab based on your width. You can adjust the size of it. It will still work. But this time, instead of tabs, it will actually create spaces. So when you erase it, it will go 1 space at a time. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's do the exact same thing. Let's go in front of this D variable, hit tab key 3 times. And now when I go and hit backspace 1 time, you can see it erases 1 space at a time. Number 6 is adjustable font size. So now you can actually adjust the size of your font in your expression editor. And to do that, you want to go into preferences. And once again, make sure you go to scripting and expressions. And in here, you have font size option. So you can crank that up to maybe like 18. Right away, you'll see that it changed in here. And when you press OK, you can see that everything has changed here as well. Number 7 is braces. And by that, I mean things like parentheses, curly brackets, square brackets. And we do have some exciting new changes in there as well. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So for this example, we're going to go into the source text property, create an expression. And in here, let's create an if-else conditional statement. I'm going to say if, and then I'm going to open up my parentheses like this. And when I do that, you can see by default, it automatically closes it and then puts my blinker inside of there, which is kind of nice. Then I can say 1 equals 1, and then I can keep going. I can open up my curly brackets. And this time it didn't close it automatically unless I press Enter key on my keyboard here. And when you do that, it auto indents the next line and also closes it on the next line, which is great. Then I can say something in here. I can say, A, you're going to equal 2. And if I open up a square bracket, you can see the same thing happens here. It automatically closes it, puts our blinker inside of there. Then I can say something like 1, 2. And let's do another line. So maybe B, you're going to equal 2. Again, open square bracket, automatically closes it. Then I can say 3, 4. So we have the first part of if-else statement, right? Then I can keep going here. I can say else, and then again, open up the curly brackets. When I hit enter, it automatically indents the next line and then also closes it on the other line. So I can keep going here. I can say A equals 2. And then if I do an open square bracket, the same thing happens. I can say 10, 20. So let's do another line. I can say B, you're going to equal 2. Again, open square brackets. And then let's do 30, 40. Okay, so we have successfully finished an if-else conditional statement. Now, the cool thing about it, it does have like auto highlight braces. So for example, if you go in front of this brace or curly bracket, you can see it automatically highlights the opening one right here. And the same thing for the opening. If you go here, it automatically highlights the closing one, which is super handy. You can see that the code is inside of these two. Number 8 is code folding. For this example, we're going to reuse the code we just wrote. So we have this conditional statement, and notice on the left, we have this feature right here. That's code folding. If you click on this button right here, it folds your code. It does exactly what it says. But we do have some options with this. If you go into preferences and make sure you go to the scripting and expressions tab, and in here we have folding options. So if you click on this drop down menu, you have 5 options. You can turn it off and you can see it goes away, or you can say arrow, which is just the same concept, just a different visual. The same thing for plus and minus, the same concept. And then we have circle tree. Again, the same concept. And then the last one, we have square tree, which is the one that comes by default. Number 9 is auto closing quotes. And really, it's the same concept that we saw with braces. So let me show you what I'm talking about. For this example, I'm going to create a new variable, a totally made up new variable called A, but anything can work. So then I'm going to assign a string called Ukra, and I'm going to use double quotes for this one. So I'm going to open up a double quote. And as you can see, automatically it closes it and puts my blinker inside of it, just like it did with braces. So now I'm going to say something like Ukra, and then I'm going to close it. And then let's go to the next line. I'm going to say variable B, totally made up. I'm going to assign you to media. So it's going to be a string, but this time instead of double quotes, I'm going to use single quotes just to show you that it works the same. So I'm going to do a single quote, open it up, automatically closes it, and puts my blinker inside of there. So then I'm going to say media. And the last one, it also works with backticks. So if I do a backtick like this, you can see it automatically closes it. And then I can say something like .com. Number 10 is autocomplete. And this feature is really powerful because it gives you suggestion as you type your code, right? Things like JavaScript syntax, After Effects, methods and properties, composition names, footage names, layer names, properties. I mean, you name it, even like variables. So let me show you what I'm talking about for this. So I have this source text property. It's a great property for debugging. So I'm going to alt click on a stopwatch to create an expression. And let's write a path to our opacity of this layer. So let's select this, press Shift T to reveal the opacity. So the first thing I would do is start at the very top. I would say this comp, as you can see, as I'm typing it, it already suggests things to me. So if I press enter while that's highlighted, it will automatically complete it for me, which is great. So now I am in this comp. Then I want this Ukramedia.com layer. So then I can say, I can use a method called layer. And as I'm typing in, you can see it already told me that, hey, use this one. And when I press enter, it completes it for me and then puts my blinker inside of these parentheses, which is awesome. And then when you do double quotes, it closes it. And now it suggests the names of your layer. So right now I have this Ukramedia.com. I can select it, press enter, so I don't have to type it. Really cool. Then I can keep going. So now we have this layer selected. And let's keep going. So I'm going to say period. So what do I want from this layer? Let's go into transform property. So I'm going to say transform. Again, I don't have to type the whole thing. It gave it to me. I just press enter and then finish it. Again, period. So now we're going to want opacity. So I'm going to say opacity. As you can see, it helped me. So this autocomplete helps you to write statements, right? And then when I click away, it gives me 100. But I can also create variables, things like, it's a totally made up variable. I'm going to say something like current layer opacity, right? And you're going to equal to the path that we just wrote. Okay. So not much has changed. We just assigned this to this variable. But the reason why I assigned it to a variable, just to show you that the same autocomplete works for variables. So if I type current, as you can see, it automatically highlights the variable. And when I press enter, it finishes it for me. And then I can say, hey, give me the name, right, of that property, opacity. So it gives me the name. Then I can say, all right, I remember this method called toUpperCase or something like that, but I don't quite remember what it was like. So I can say something like, all right, make this whole thing uppercase, right? So then I can say toUpper. Here you go. As you can see, it suggests it for me. It highlights it. Then when I press enter, it applies it. When I click away, everything's in caps. Number 11 is word wrapping. And essentially, it's just the way After Effects formats our code when we work with smaller windows. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So for this example, I have this one line of code, and I'm going to make this editor much smaller. So I'm going to drag this all the way to the right. And as you can see, by default, as I make this smaller, After Effects automatically formats it into two different lines. So it takes one line of code and puts it into two different lines. And it kind of wraps it, right, based on a word. So we do have options for these. And to do that, you have to go into preferences. And there you'll see an option for word wrap. If you go here, you'll see it says word wrap. We have three options. So if you click on this drop-down menu, you see none, word, and character. So if you set it to none, here's what happens. So when you go into it, you can see it puts the whole expression on just a single line, which can come in handy sometimes. But we also have other options. And by default, it is set to word, which is what we saw before. But if you go to character and press OK, you can see that now it cuts it based on character. And the last one is update legacy expression script. If you're not familiar with the change in the previous version of After Effects, Adobe introduced a new expressions engine called JavaScript engine. The update kind of caused some issues because things that used to work in the legacy extend script engine no longer work in the new JavaScript engine. And so it did create some issues also for us as well. I had to rewrite some scripts. But overall, it's a good thing because we're more up to date and it's awesome. But now they wrote a script that takes your old legacy extend script code that you wrote that no longer works in the new JavaScript engine. It takes that code and then converts it into the new JavaScript code. That's what this script does. And so for this example, I listed 5 things that no longer work in the new JavaScript engine. Things like you can't write if-else statement all on one line without putting these in code block, which is curly brackets, right? The same thing for, and I don't know why this was even allowed, but used to, you were able to call up a function that you haven't even created yet, right? And then you could create it underneath there and it would still work, but now it doesn't work anymore. And then we used to have this shorthand, this, you instead of saying this layer, you could say this and then rotation. So you were used to able to do that in the old legacy extend script, but you can't do that anymore, obviously. And then also the same thing, the way you access the text, right? The index. Before you could just say index value, but now you have to put value. And so that would no longer work in the new JavaScript engine. And also the old snake case, that doesn't work anymore. I never even used that, but again, I just listed 5 different things that no longer work. So if I click away, you can see it gives me error, it doesn't work. But now we have a script that can take this, and it's not intimidated by this. It can take this and then fix it to where it would actually work in the new JavaScript engine. So here's how it works. You go to File, and then Scripts, and in here we have Update Legacy Expressions. When you click on that, you'll see a pop-up window come up. And then in here, we have some options. You can say all compositions, selected compositions. I'm going to say selected properties because we're dealing with one property. So then you can just select this property and then you say update. It's that easy. When you click it, you can see it gives you kind of like the summary of what has happened. It changed 5 things. When I click away, you can see now my function is at the very top, just like it's supposed to, and we call it up underneath it. Then you can see it broke it up, my if-else conditional statement, it broke it up into 2 lines. So that's good. And then instead of this, it added this layer. And then instead of just calling up the index, it did add value in here. So it fixed it. And the last one, so we had a snake case here. So this underscore comp, and it just fixed it to this object called this comp. So yeah, this script is definitely very handy. All right, well, this is the end of this video. I really hope you found it useful. And if you have, make sure you hit like, subscribe to this channel, follow us on social media. And if you want to learn more about expressions in After Effects, you should definitely take our course on expressions at Ukramedia.com/expressions. And if you're planning on being at NAB this year, you should definitely stop by the Adobe booth where I'll be doing 2 presentations on Monday and Tuesday. So stop by and say hi. I would love to see you. But until next time, my name is Sergey Praknevsky, and this is Ukramedia.com.